What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Sorry for the noise in the background. There's some people working back here. I told you this week's episode of 3 Rounds with Jay would be emanating live from Punta Cana, the Dominican Republic. This is the first time ever. We're down here for a wedding, so I thought I would do something quick. A little quick catch up for what went on last week with the UFC and Bellator fights. And there was also a boxing event. Canelo Alvarez was going for his a new championship in a new weight division. So there's a lot of things that we're going to get covered in a short period of time. I don't want to spend too much of our time. Hell, I am in a beautiful sunny, like I said, Punta Cana, the Dominican Republic. No snow around here, unlike what's going on back home. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, look at my new background. I love it. I think it's nice. I think it's shiny. I think it's bright. Look at that. We don't even have the 3 Rounds with J logo that I've been trying to change for the last couple of weeks. So with all of that being said, let's jump right into it. Let's break it down. Let's have ourselves a little fight recap of what went on last week. What went on at UFC Box 31. Not important. Anyways, Box 31, what went on? It was the main event. It was Kevin Lee taking on Iaquinta. Leading up to this fight, I said that I felt that if Kevin Lee was not able to utilize his wrestling to the full capacity, that it would be a tough fight against Iaquinta. What ended up happening was just that. Kevin Lee utilized his wrestling at times, taking down Iaquinta and nullifying Al's ability to strike. But what happened in the majority of the later rounds was that Al was able to stop most of the takedowns and keep the fight standing, where he was able to land the more effective shots between the two fighters. The fight did end up going to a judge's decision, which left Kevin Lee stunned. Kevin Lee could not believe that he lost this fight, but when you really have to think about it, we really have to think about what went on was, did Kevin Lee do enough when he was taking down Iaquinta? Did he do enough to make the judges believe that there was a chance that he was going to stop the fight? To be honest, I didn't think so. There were a few moments where he had Al in trouble, but it didn't look as though it was enough to get this fight stopped, and the judges saw it the same way as I did. At the end of the day, it seemed that the later rounds, especially 4 and 5, was that Al was taking over, and Al was able to do what he does best, and that was pick up the striking and also stop the takedown attempts by Kevin Lee, which was something that he showed when he was fighting Khabib earlier this year in March. He showed that he's able to get back to his feet, and he showed that he's able to land the more effective strikes when it's necessary. Hell, Al has been able to show true heart and tremendous endurance in these fights, and that's what made him overcome Kevin Lee, and that's what earned him a split decision against Kevin Lee on Fox 31. So it was a tough fight for Kevin Lee, because now he's in a position where he is a top guy, but he just lost to someone who, in many people's minds, and the betting god, and the matchmakers and the odds makers, had him as a dog, had Kevin Lee as the favorite, and Al as a pretty significant underdog. As you remember, on last week's 3 Rounds with Jay, I suggested, and I even said that I was predicting Al Iaquinta was going to take this victory. I felt that his striking was going to play the big part and the big difference, and it did. Regardless of Kevin Lee's speed over Iaquinta was able to land the bigger shots of the two. As you can hear, it's kind of noisy back there. I apologize for this. I can't really mute them, but anyways. So, Iaquinta picked up the victory on that one. Your co-main event was Edson Barboza taking on Dan Hooker. I thought Dan Hooker was going to be the guy to put Edson Barboza in his place and to stop him and to defeat him and to once and for all maybe make Edson Barboza consider moving weight or changing division at this point. Same thing, changing division, moving weight. But Dan Hooker looked as though he was kind of sluggish. And from all I've heard, he did suffer a concussion in that fight and was sent to the hospital to be reviewed and to make sure that he is all right. It was a brutal fight. It was a brutal back and forth fight. And it was one that Edson Barboza gave a performance of a lifetime. He brutalized Dan Hooker. We have never seen Dan Hooker look as bad as he did on this night. And Edson Barboza looked crisp, he looked fast, his body shots were key and were the reason why this fight was stopped. He was able to pick Dan Hooker apart and put him away in the 3rd round by TKO with the body work. Rob Font took on Sergio Pettis. Rob Font got this decision over Sergio Pettis by surprisingly taking Sergio down and just dominating him the majority of the fight. This was something I did not expect to see. I did not think that Rob Font was going to play the ground game with Sergio, but it played out to his advantage, and it put Sergio Pettis in a weird position just like his brother, where they're good, but they're just not good enough go with the elite and top level fighters. They're exciting fighters that we love to watch. They're these guys that put on these masterful performances at times when they're facing not the elite competition. But when it comes to the top dogs and potentially getting title shots, they just can't live up to the hype, right? They can't live up to their own expectations that they set for themselves, and it's something that they're gonna have to take a step back and maybe go back to the drawing board and reevaluate the way that they're able to compete. Because at this point, both brothers, including Sergio Pettis, they were groomed for greatness, but they've been struggling along the ways. And to lose to a guy like Rob Font, who I'm not putting down, Rob Font is an elite striker, and he was able to show you that his grappling is just as good. Rob Font did what he did best, and he took him to the ground, and now he is looking like $1 million and potentially for a top 10 contender to get him to that title shot that he's looking for in the bantamweight division. And in your lightweight opening bout, it was Jim Miller taking on Charles Oliveira. I felt strongly in the fact that I thought if Charles Oliveira took this fight to the ground, he was going to be able to submit Jim Miller, and that's just exactly what happened. It's just as quickly as I'm going to go through this fight, within 1 minute and 15 seconds, Jim Miller was not able to do anything. He threw a kick, got caught. Charles took the back, landed a rear naked choke, and that was it at the end of the day. He was just incapable of doing anything else, really, once he was taken to the ground, which is something shocking for an All-American wrestler and a guy who is a legitimate black belt in Jiu-Jitsu. But Charles Oliveira, once again, looked like a beast. I told you he's had the most submissions probably in this division. He at one point was a submission specialist, or he still is a submission specialist, but he was at one point considered a submission phenom, and hell, what a victory he performed. We also had, on the same night, a Bellator event. It was Michael Chandler, taking on Brent Primus for the lightweight championship of the world. I originally said leading up to this fight that I felt that maybe Mike Chandler's all-around ability and skill was going to be the problem for Brent Primus, and it was just that. Brent was mostly looking for the strikes. He did clip Mike Chandler at one point and did get his back and did sink in what seemed to be a tight rear naked choke. But Michael Chandler managed to hold his composure, turn it around, get into his guard, and grind out a decision victory, just as I expected he would do. Mike Chandler was not playing around. He does do these things where he does the swing for the fences and puts himself in some danger when it comes to these fights. He needs to work on that. You want to fight the elite level, and I'm not saying that Brent Primus is not at an elite level, but he's just not at the same level as Michael Chandler is, or Edson Barboza is, or Eddie Alvarez is, or pretty much Patricky Pitbull is in the lightweight division in Bellator. He needs to go back to the drawing board. He needs to continue to work on his game, and once it comes time in a few years, he was 8-0, now 8-1. He will be a top-tier contender. Michael Chandler needs to consider toning down on his overextending strikes and his wildness and of nature and fighting. Michael Chandler needs to tighten up his movement more, because when he's fighting the top guys, it's not going to cut it going out there and going for broke and taking the guy down and holding him down. Aside from that, we had another Bellator event that took place on Saturday night live from Hawaii. It was your co-main event of Lyoto Machida taking on Rafael Carvalho. He was the former middleweight champion of the world who had lost it to now current middleweight champion of the world, Gegard Mousasi. Lyoto Machida, he defeated Rafael. I was pretty surprised by this. He looked like $1 million, and he was able to do what he did best. He was able to keep a distance. He was also able to, not only was he able to keep a distance, but he managed to use the very same technique I said, his karate, which was not going to work, his countering. It worked. Who would have thought that this would have played out the way it did? He managed to hold his distance, and he managed to pick him apart when it was necessary and secure himself a victory. Your main event was this. It was hometown hero Macfarlane facing on Valérie Letourneau for the Women's Flyweight Championship of the world. Macfarlane looked like $1 million. My goodness, this girl, if she is not groomed to be the next big thing in Bellator and in mixed martial arts in general, I don't know who is. She was the hometown hero. She sent the crowd home happy. She managed to beat Valérie wherever it was necessary to beat her. She was superior on the feet. She was spectacular on the ground, and the ground was what secured it for her. She picked up that victory without any hesitation, without really any trouble, but at the same time, it was Macfarlane's toughest test to date, where Valérie was in her face the entire time. There was no pulling back, there was no pushing back, there was none of this. It reached a point where she was able to solidify a triangle choke in the third round, Macfarlane, and Valérie could just not do anything more. I told you that Valérie was a legitimate test for Macfarlane, but I also said that in terms of Macfarlane's skills, Macfarlane was going to be the better of the two, and that's just what ended up happening in this fight. Macfarlane was able to solidify and play her ground game to a T and take her down whenever she needed to take her down, and then took the neck, took the choke, and won by triangle choke. So ladies and gentlemen, those were your UFC and Bellator recaps of the weekend. Also, I did